Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where we debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name's Brody, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts Amanda and Christian as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from the Bad Batch Season 2, episodes 11 and 12. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where this piece of Star Wars content ranks amongst the rest, or I guess these pieces of Star Wars content. With that, we're almost done with Bad Batch. It's coming to the end here.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
This is a good couple episodes.
Yeah, it was like ramping up.
Yeah, we had a kind of a lull last week, and then this week it's like up in the ante here.
2 for 2.
Yeah, 2 for 2. Two great, they're pretty great episodes.
Pretty great episode.
What are they about, Amanda?
Okay, so episode 11, Metamorphosis. The episode follows the Bad Batch as they attempt to retrieve cargo for Sid from a nearby crash site. We are also introduced to the newest villain, Dr. Hemlock, a scientist who is overseeing the Imperial cloning program. He visits the Kaminoan scientist Nala Se looking for her cooperation on his next project. Meanwhile, the Batch surveys the wreckage. While the Bad Batch surveys the wreckage, they discover a clone of the Zillo Beast has caused the crash, killing the entire crew, and is now heading for a nearby village. The Empire sends in ships to tranquilize and capture the Zillo Beast, and the Bad Batch retreats to avoid capture. At the end of the episode, Lama Su reveals Omega as a key target to getting Nala Se to cooperate. The Outpost. Lieutenant Nolan is the commanding officer for Crosshair's new mission. As the remaining clone troopers are now being forced into retirement, it's clear Nolan does not respect them, calling them used equipment. When arriving to their destination, a snowy planet called Barton 4, they see a nearly empty depot. Clone Commander Mayday tells Nolan and Crosshair that they have been stranded and dwindling due to raiders in the area stealing their cargo. Lieutenant Nolan sends Mayday and Crosshair to recover the stolen cargo, and they follow orders. When an avalanche almost takes out Mayday, Crosshair refuses to leave him behind and returns to the base begging for help. Lieutenant Nolan shows no sympathy and completely disregards Mayday's sacrifice. Crosshair shoots and kills Nolan before collapsing unconscious.
Well, everything you just said warranted breaking down episode by episode because both have so much to unpack. Let's just start with episode 11 here. What a fun episode, so reminiscent in scenes from Alien.
Oh yeah,
we got the Zillo Beast back, and in so many ways is similar to the clones, is brought up in this environment it didn't ask to, is doing whatever it takes just to break free, only to become captive of the Empire for whatever, disregarding its life. They need its armor for whatever their purposes are. So there's a lot to unpack with that episode. How do we feel about it?
Good. It even looked like the alien, like from Alien.
Yeah.
It had that
like doesn't
same
have eyes,
artistic design. Yeah. It was how I wanted the Bad Batch to be, kind of like this is a good adventure action episode that also has great callbacks to the Clone Wars. And I think it did a good job, especially on that lore side of like connecting to the overall stuff of Star Wars. But it was fun. It was a good, I don't know, fun episode.
Yeah, from the very beginning moments of the episode, we start on the ship as it's breaking and falling apart, and you're like, I need to go down this way. Yeah. But where's it? I can hear it around in the rafters and stuff, and it's just such a fun way to cold open a show. Yes, the obvious Alien references throughout were what made this so fun to watch. And yeah, I think exactly what you were saying is I wish there was a little bit of that overlap in some of the storytelling that we got in the Clone Wars. So that's what makes this episode feel really good.
It does well at connecting it to the Star Wars universe. But yeah, like the technical aspect for one as well. Opening up, panning around that cargo ship. That was a great, I don't know, directive liberty they took with the show. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, Dr. Hemlock came out the gate swinging. Pretty great villain. Just has that kind of that Thrawn appeal to him where he's
really calm and collected.
Calm, collected, but very cold and disassociated, and will do what it takes to get what he wants. And, the stuff he's going to do, I'm sure will hit a lot more at home with the clones, because he's, manipulating genes and doing all the things that basically perverts what their original creation is.
Yeah.
And so it's if you're the Bad Batch, he is just beyond evil.
Yeah, and adding on top of that, the whole layer that they had all of this clone equipment and technology and scientists already at their disposal, and then they were just like, yeah, we're just gonna blow it up. And the one scientist who remains is Nala Se, and she has just kind of seems like she's just been chilling in like jail for the most part. Like her lips are sealed.
Yeah. Doing time. Their little exchange back and forth. To me, the credit to the voice actors, like they really immerse you into that scene.
Yeah.
But it was almost too much like ASMR podcast, the way they're both talking to each other, and it was like, this isn't real life. Like,
I can see that.
Talk. Like, it was I don't know, more so funny or comical. That's what I thought of listening to that too. Yeah. Yes.
No, let's say
We're gonna get everyone to unsubscribe.
It was
now.
almost
we just lost like at least half of our listenership. So
it was almost like the voice actors were going like too hard into this thing.
Yeah, they're like, "Whoa, it's just a kids show."
Like Filoni's like listening there back. Oh, okay, back up.
Let's add a little bit more inflection into the voice. No, the voice.
Get the mic out of your mouth.
The actor who plays Dr. Hemlock, he has been in a lot of stuff. He was in Westworld. He was also in, what is the big obvious thing?
He's one of the McPoyles in Always Sunny.
What else? Oh, he's also in House of Cards.
Yeah.
So he's known for playing a good bad guy. Yeah. And I think his voice...
I think the voice made sense.
I actually did not realize that that's who it was. And it's really cool to see someone's voice translate that well into this character.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was really great. Loved any chance you get to see some clone commandos. So that was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
Did they ever say what happened to that first Zillow beast in this episode from the Clone Wars? What was the fate of that specific one?
I don't know.
I know that our listeners are definitely going to be like, well, duh, didn't you know?
What the heck, guys?
what do I listen to this podcast for?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really know.
We just know the last time that it was in the Clone Wars, I remember like
it died,
Palpatine say yes, but I think I remember like Palpatine saying something like, I want to clone that. And it turns out, wow, he did that.
Yeah.
I want that.
If you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it just like Palpatine.
Wow.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Check out our store.
We don't have that, but maybe one day. Overall, looks like the highest thing we ranked this episode was the immersive universe. Checks out.
Yeah,
it does. With the technical aspects coming in second, I really did like how they made the beast in its more infant stage. Like it was very mechanical, very fluid, and it looked good. Yeah. And it didn't look as clunky as like the big Zillow beast does usually.
Right.
But I thought they did really well creating that cryptic beast.
So if you don't remember the Zillow beast, what makes it unique is that it grows in size and in power as it like absorbs
energy. Energon.
So it grows exponentially until the point where it's sort of like this Godzilla like
kaiju.
It is really kind of cool to see like these familiar horror tropes making their alien like debut kind of thing.
And fit it pretty darn well into a Star Wars narrative. Like that was good.
And what I liked about this episode too is that the Empire is actually the one that comes in and stops it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, like, you kind of just grow to expect that the Bad Batch is going to find the solution and be the ones that save everybody. But this totally shows that, like, yeah, the Empire has a plan for this, and they're not going to let this one thing get in the way of it.
Yeah.
And that also just adds like another layer, and for like the Bad Batch to be like, oh crap, we have to hide.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that the Empire came through in the end.
Yeah, and with their role, you mentioned, Brody, the commandos. It's always cool to see the clone commandos coming in, and I thought it was cinematic where, like, that shot where they're unleashing or running out of the ship, and that one commando's just standing there, like, watching, scene where they're all gonna scout out and gather the witnesses for questioning. I thought that was a good, eye that the director had too on this episode.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting is the Bad Batch is making their escape. You have, it seems like some of the ships turn around and chase the Bad Batch, where I'm like, shouldn't that moment, I guess it worked out, so they knew what they were doing, but shouldn't the only priority be like take down the Zillo Beast?
Yeah.
But
You'd think.
yeah, they were like, you know what, we know what we're doing, we got this, we don't need all
And it
forces
turned
here.
out, what was it, sound that it was like, what was the like blast that the Empire used to tranquilize it? Was it a sound blast? I can't even remember now.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
Like
Yeah,
the little blue laser from the satellite thing
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it was. Then they put it in that tank at the end.
Yeah. Yep.
In a
Like Luke
cryo
Skywalker.
state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to tank.
Just chilling.
Just heal it up.
Just chilling. Yeah. Don't know exactly what the full purpose is of it yet.
I feel like you should like make it a power source, right? Like, it's absorbed all of that energy. Can you like have it in like a hamster wheel now? And then you're like, wow, we can power the whole village now.
First you praise Palpatine. Now you're finding ways to use animals for your own benefit. I'm a little scared right now, Amanda. You're taking a dark turn this episode. You're going down a path I cannot follow.
You're breaking my heart.
Insert clip. Where did you two have any major critiques of this one? Like, what was the lowest scoring category for this one? I'm curious.
Looks like that was the characters.
The character.
No,
the music.
The music.
I don't think the music was bad by any means.
It wasn't like stealing the spotlight.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't have anything iconic.
Took a break from this one. Like, let's just cue the normal.
Move the story along.
Yeah,
Nothing.
Christian, you gave the characters a 2.8, and
that tanked it.
And Brody and I both gave it. I gave it my score because I really liked the introduction of Dr. Hemlock. I'm wondering why you didn't like it so much.
Yeah, I think I was just more focused on like the Bad Batch itself. It really didn't do anything in terms of them.
Yeah, I can see that. It didn't really test any of their.
And I think all of my 2.8 went towards Dr. Hemlock.
Dang.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, you did 3.8. Brody did 4.2. What about the characters? Or like, was it just Dr. Hemlock, or was there anything else that I'm
Well,
missing?
I mean, I just liked the use of characters within this. As you mentioned before, like the clone commandos, every single one of them had an impactful moment in this episode in the beginning, where obviously there's that one that's terrified and you feel bought in. It kind of increases your own anxiety and your own, like, you just fear for the character that you don't know the name, you don't know anything about him. You kind of hope he makes it out, but we all know he's probably not, and then he doesn't.
Yeah.
Dr. Hemlock was amazing. Nala Se, her storyline there is getting more and more interesting. And you're seeing within this, obviously all that stuff's really good. Within the Bad Batch themselves, something that I think you overlooked was you have Tech this week having so much more respect for Omega than before. Omega, this episode, brings up her technical expertise, and actually Tech defers to her in that moment when it comes to Kamino and Tech. So he backs up, he lets her take the role, and there's 3 other instances where he refers to her on an equal level. It's the first time we'd ever seen that. And so
it's not the first time though.
but we're seeing that growth in comparison to the last week's episode.
I felt like I also saw Omega's confidence because of the last episode too. She was like, I know the Kaminoan technology. I'm just gonna go do that. And it wasn't about like, oh, Omega, you're like a smaller one of us, so why don't you go play with some building blocks or something, you know?
I
Like they trusted her and she was like trusted herself, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I gotcha. It makes sense. I guess I didn't really see it as that big of a step because they like trusted her with like that power drill,
Yep.
getting stuff before. Like they've given her tasks before, like they've deferred to her before, but yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So then outside of that, the character being the Zillow Beast itself, I thought was really interesting because you did see the parallel this whole season about these creatures and people and everything that's being oppressed. Even the own people who are on the side of the Empire are under a form of duress, and they don't even half the time know it. And so with Admiral Rampart, and I'm sure you're going to see more stuff with Dr. Hemlock, but right now with the Zillow Beast, everyone's just losing their freedoms left and right, and people that are things that are bred with the intention of just using some resource without any sort of regard for that creature's just having a will of its own. Yeah. So, I mean, all that to be said, they thought there was a lot to peel back on with this episode with the characters. So that's why instead of just seeing that surface level stuff that I feel like you can get with a lot of animated Star Wars, that I really appreciated in this week's episode.
And that pulled it up to 76.9%.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel good about that. Now, on another note, I mean, one of the best pieces of Star Wars ever for me. It's so good. And I know you two don't rank it that high, but my goodness, this last episode, where episode 12, where that we know we had the synopsis already, but what an episode.
Yeah. It really is. I mean,
what an episode.
Compared to the rest of the Bad Batch as a series.
These crosshair arcs.
This is it. After watching it, I was like, wow, they really did not pull back any punches. It was very sad, very real. I think that was the one word that kind of came to mind after watching it. I was like, wow, that's very real.
Yeah.
And they kind of went all in for this one episode of the Bad Batch on that.
Yeah.
Like,
just one.
I hear it's a part of a two-parter, but I haven't. This is the furthest I've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm gonna bump up one more thing too. I gave 2 perfect 5s with both the story and the characters. The story, if you've watched it, I mean, you already gave the breakdown, but you see the clones that are there just being good soldiers. They've changed up their armor just to stay warm, and their armor is dingy and it's breaking, and people are losing their lives and they're being picked off one by one. And I forget the general's name, but
Nolan.
Yeah.
No. Commander Mayday.
Yeah, Commander Mayday. He super relatable, and you like him, and Crosshair's kind of bought into him. They have that moment with the landmine where they really connect, and you find out they did all of this for just stormtrooper armor.
Yeah.
They lost their lives on this mission to get it back, and it was just stormtrooper armor. And then on the way back, Mayday is buried in the snow, as is Crosshair's regard for the Empire. And when he takes him back, and they have the opportunity to save Mayday's life, but Nolan, who could not care less, because
he directs them to like go back to work.
Yeah, you're just a resource for a resource.
He's like trying to kill him
with diminishing returns every single day, and couldn't care less because you are going to be displaced very soon, if not because of your aging, how accelerated that is, or because they just don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about stormtroopers. You're just a mean to an end. And to see Crosshair, this was the moment he finally snapped. It was beautiful to see in this story and see how it, how he finally rebelled. And as far as the characters, there's not a whole lot more I ever want from any piece of, and whenever I watch an episode of a TV show, there's not really a whole lot more I want. You mean emotionally you connect. I thought Mayday was written so well. And I couldn't believe how like they just had him literally slowly pass away in front of Crosshair. And all to, again, you finally have this redeeming moment for himself where he actually pulls the trigger and kills the bad guy
For the first time.
Yeah, no
Yep.
stun gun.
Yeah.
No stun.
No stun
That's
gun.
for clones.
This was this is for me the best episode of the Bad Batch. And honestly, it's probably up there for the best storytelling ever for animated Star Wars. I don't think it gets a whole lot deeper. I mean, yes, you can go into the lore of Anakin versus or Maul versus Maul versus Ahsoka or Vader versus Ahsoka, but this is in one single episode. It stands alone. You don't have to see any other Bad Batch. You can watch this and walk away from it being like, I need to watch the rest of that show. So that's my take.
Very well said. And I think what we've talked about this in a couple other episodes too, like this one only focuses on Crosshair and we don't go back and forth like following two different kind of storylines. It forces you to stay connected to the story, and that makes it also just sit so much harder with you.
Yeah. And I have to agree. It is like the best episode of the Bad Batch that I've seen thus far. And like season 1, season 2. And it's for someone who like I personally don't really enjoy the show that much, but it is undeniably good. This episode, The Outpost,
Yeah.
especially like with what the music was great, like turned it up a notch. And even just like there's a lot of like little symbolism throughout the way, and like the ice vulture and like I think it was a really well written piece of like a serialized story, like a standalone, like you said, Brody, that did really well. And I like, even though, yeah, like I said, haven't been enjoying a bunch of this, but it's undeniably, it has to get a higher score. So I had to give that story the higher score. The music for sure. I really liked always going back to Crosshair's, like he's got this wicked synth thing going on whenever he's back. So I get excited now when he kind of comes back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
I like when Star Wars is bleak and sad. So I really liked this episode. It felt like this they took this episode so much more seriously than they did so many other episodes.
Yeah,
You know, like
it
they
does
put
feel
all
out
of
of
their
place.
resources into like, we're gonna tell this incredible, we have to come up with this television show just so we can tell this one episode about like the spirit of the soldier changing, you know?
Yeah.
And it paid off.
Yeah.
Because the whole time we've been watching The Bad Batch, and like from the beginning, Crosshair is othered and like removes himself as part of the crew. I'm like, okay, where or if is this redemption arc going to come? Like, what is the point of this character? And finally, it feels like he's getting more fleshed out.
Yeah, definitely. He is the most relatable he's been. He's been a robot, kind of.
Yeah.
Not to say he hasn't had moments along the way, but yeah, and in picking the spectacle of snow in that aspect, and then what were the snow people? I call them the snow people because they sound like the sand people, the Tusken Raiders, but I don't know what they were called, or I hadn't done my research on that. But that was, I think, the first time I saw something like that.
Yeah, I mean, who knows why it could have just been just trying to steal it, or who knows the backstory behind that. But yeah, obviously you see the clones that more and more this season just pity. And I think
thank God it wasn't a desert planet. That's all I was thinking.
Well, and I think to the snow, it just adds this to the state of their living predicament, where it's you're
Miserable.
fighting to survive just the elements alone. And people, I mean, I'm sure clones have lost their lives to hypothermia and other things before we got to this episode. And so they're fighting off people who are trying to kill him for gear. They're fighting off their health. They're fighting all sorts of things that are just bringing him down. And ultimately, the people who are employing him don't care. And when they get there, you see it's just stormtrooper armor. So, and all of those things still didn't have Crosshair crack. He still didn't turn. And so, what I love about this episode from the storytelling perspective, I don't think there was any better way to make Crosshair turn, because they did thing after thing after thing, and so much stuff mounted, and it was all not enough. Even the stormtrooper gear wasn't enough. Cody leaving, everything else, all the lessons he'd learned up to that point, still not enough for him to convert. But when finally there's a loyal, good clone who passed away right there, and there's the opportunity to help him, and they don't take it, that's where he's just like, all right, like, I'm done. And I just love that. I love the execution of that from the storytelling perspective. And I think you're right. It does feel a bit out of place in comparison to other Bad Batch episodes. But I don't know how many times Star Wars has ever taken itself so seriously. And I'm for it.
Loves a good revenge story.
And of course, there's also the parallels that the Bad Batch left Crosshair behind on Camino at the end of season 1.
Yeah, and he didn't turn after waiting however many rotations.
And there's something about like leaving a soldier behind and like carrying dead weight, and that type of language is used over and over again. And even Mayday tells him like, don't bother, like I'm gone anyway. And I think it almost surprises Crosshair himself that he is so compelled to like bring the soldier back.
Yeah. Along the way. I did think it was funny. Once again, kind of like the pain meter scale on Bad Batch. Like he was outside in this blizzard without a hat, without covering his ears. I'm like, this guy's got to.
His lips are falling off. His
like,
ears are falling off.
His face should be purple. Like I was just like, getting back to like that landscape of snow. Yeah, that physical element kind of added to that anxiety to the audience member.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, overall, we rated it. I mean, I gave it a 92%, and I stick by that. I would rather watch this episode of Bad Batch over, I mean, at least half the Star Wars movies, if not more.
Whoa.
I don't think that's that crazy. Most Star Wars movies aren't that great. This was fantastic. Just on its own, I'd rather watch this. And as I've said, since I was a kid, I care more about the clones than I do Luke Skywalker, easily. So, like, that's not a shocking take for me. But so overall, I gave it 92. Amanda gave it an 82.8, and Christian gave it a 78. So this episode sits at an 84.27%. A little sad, couldn't rank higher, but that's what this
overall
show's about.
Still really great.
I think maybe if we would have seen, or maybe if we've seen Crosshair more throughout the whole show, I would care more. But like, it's undeniably a great episode and a great single story. But watching it, like, I don't care as much because I don't feel as close or connected to Crosshair, especially with his limited screen time throughout the whole show.
I get that.
So it's like, what if we did stuff like this with Crosshair and do stuff like that with every other member of the Bad Batch?
Yes.
It's like, you can do this. It's not like they all have to be together and Crosshair has to be alone. Like, if you're going to get real, if you're going to get real and you're going to roll the dice, do it.
Yeah, choose different characters.
Dive into that.
Yeah.
Clearly,
give each one of them an
well.
episode. Give each one of them an episode like that.
Yeah. I mean, right now I'm going through the TV show The Crown on Netflix, which a lot of episodes do just that. And, shows like Lost do a really good job of just picking a character.
Yeah.
And it works.
It does. It gives you like a day in the life. It really puts you in their POV.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every show has to do that when you're featuring a group, but clearly and we'll get to this later on, but like clearly it looks like you're holding back punches when you're focusing on the group as opposed to just Crosshair.
I agree.
Yeah, just an observation.
Well, with all that, I think we just tackled most everything. So this was a great episode. I don't know if I personally don't think it's going to get better from here with the Bad Batch. So, Christian,
You
We're
don't think
close.
Let's
you
just
don't
call
think
it.
we're on the rise? Just bang bang higher
No.
scores.
You said it's the
I
best
feel it.
season.
I feel
yeah,
it, man.
but I'm not going to give it higher than a 92. That's
I
darn
feel
near
it, man.
perfect.
We're gonna sky high.
Well,
baby.
you gave it a 78, so I think there is still room to
Yeah,
grow
yeah.
from you. For you,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
still room. For me, I'm gonna meet you down on the way down.
You'll
I'll
meet me
meet
on
you
the way down.
Yeah, I'll meet you. I'll meet you there. We'll have a hug. All right. Well, with that, it's time for the hot takes segment of the show. Let's get to it.
Don't be too proud of this podcast you've constructed. The ability to rank content is insignificant next to the power of an exceptional hot take.
It's hot takes time, and I've got a couple tonight.
A couple, all
I
right.
got a couple. First and foremost, I think the Zillow Beast design is tacky. I just think it's silly. It's just this stringy creature that, I mean, like, it's got a cool sound, but I just think it kind of looks silly, at least in this animated form. So I know a lot of folks love this giant kaiju looking thing, but you mentioned it earlier, Christian, when you see its adolescent form, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Then you see when it gets big, and I'm just like, I don't know why I think of like Big Bird or something. I'm just like, this is not. Obviously, if I were physically there, that's very intimidating. But on screen, I'm like, that's.
No, yeah,
Doesn't
it
have
does
for me.
feel like it's just like really ribbony. It reminds me of those like wacky inflatable arm tube flailing.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only it's like it's like someone took like a straw and was like, and it just went like, I don't know.
Someone's got it.
It's a little goofy.
We got it. We got it. Use that shot.
Yeah,
Zillow
it gets a
Beast.
little goofy as it scales instead of like, just kind of literally scaling up in like a Godzilla type way.
Yeah. I have to agree with you.
I agree,
100%.
yeah.
I don't know if it's a hot take. Maybe, I don't know, the community out there has this big love for the Zillow Beast. Like, how dare he criticize
I
the
think it's a hot
animators?
take.
I feel like they do.
Okay.
When I
okay.
was reading about this episode beforehand, there seems to be a lot of love.
Okay.
I don't know if they love the design or they just love the character, but anyway.
Maybe my agreement has blinded me to that. I agree with you. It doesn't ruffle my feathers.
Well, then it's not a hot take to you. So for
Yeah.
you, it's milk toast. But you think it's a hot take.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm getting it. Let's go. All right. What other takes do we have?
I don't have a take.
All right. My back's going to hurt tonight from carrying the
We got a
team.
soundbite for that.
We do have it. We soundbite. Oh, yeah, that's true. We do.
I find your lack of good takes disturbing.
That worked out too, because it's got a snowy Hoth
Did work.
background.
Yeah.
Christian,
For
do you
this
have
one.
one?
I do. Well, it may have lost its spice by now, but my hot take was Crosshair carries the show, the whole show, like he did Mayday.
Milk toast for me. Because I'm so in agreement with you there
There we go.
that feathers are not ruffled.
I am just gonna say disagree. I'm gonna say it's a hot
Tell
take.
me why.
Because I think there are stories around the rest of the Bad Batch that are interesting, even though this is one of the best episodes and it doesn't feature the Bad Batch. I don't think this show would be able to exist solely on Crosshair's like personality
Yeah,
and story.
very dry personality.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
So I
Yeah.
disagree.
And I
Alright.
say it's milk toast. So I just
Well.
think we just got to leave this one up in the air.
You can just give me the thumbs down.
You want the thumbs down? All right.
Just some variety.
We don't even.
I got a
All
bad
right.
feeling about this hot take.
Took one for the team there.
That's probably what most of the community thinks too. I don't know, but maybe.
I love how you're like, probably. You're like, I don't check the Twitter. What do I know?
I didn't. Oh, I should have gone back and looked at the numbers, but I do think the Crosshair episodes, those are the high scores that are like pulling the average for this show.
Yeah. Okay.
From a numbers perspective, but
yeah.
But yeah, you can't do the Bad Batch show on just one guy, right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So with that, got another take here. It's a bit long-winded. I haven't really formulated what the take exactly is yet, but I think I know where I'm going with this. We'll see. I'll just keep talking until I find my way along the way. All right. So I owe an apology to all Hollywood writers that I've given so much flack to. For the most part, Rings of Power has no excuse in my book so far. We'll see. The showrunners have a lot of explaining to do, and when I hear the explanation from them, I am only more saddened than I am anything else. But anyway, okay. So with this show, and especially Mandalorian, I had stated before, I'm very nervous for the future of Star Wars. I don't trust this future of Mandalorian because of the writers and the writing. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the writing, and I've always been pretty hard to this point with Lucasfilm's writers. Now, obviously, I'm not in Hollywood. I'm not privy to seeing the working conditions of these writers. But in light of recent events with the strike that's going on with Hollywood, TV shows, I've been able to learn a lot more about how they're compensated, how they're paid, the time they'll go from when they get a check to when they get another check, and it's pretty insane. And obviously, the amount of shows that used to come out on TV has more than 10x'd in the last 10, 15 years. But there are a lot of things that folks are doing that really don't take care of, or just folks, I should say studios, where they don't really take care of their writers in a way that enables them to do their best job, not only with the compensation, but one thing that used to be a common practice was they allowed writers to come on set and actually watch everything play out. So when an actor would come up and say, this line isn't right, the writer would have the ability to say, okay, well, talk me through it. They created the character, but they get to work in conjunction with the actor to find something that works. And so often in Star Wars, as of right now, there's so much that feels clunky, like misplaced. You don't really understand it. And obviously, I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are good at what they do, but it seems that there's just so much that, again, I don't know if Lucasfilm falls into the same category as these other studios, but I can't imagine it's been easy on these writers to have to churn out so much content, many of which I'm sure doesn't actually get taken off the ground, goes to focus groups and then gets shelved for later. So I'm sure they're writing an enormous amount of content, which, look, I obviously you're a writer and they're bringing in so many more writers to take on these jobs and do these things. But at the end of the day, if they're not given the opportunity to go out and actually, especially the biggest thing, be in front of the actors as stuff's being executed, it seems to me that we all kind of knew that Disney was more putting out content to meet a deadline more so than to do what was right by the IP and take care of it and love it and nurture it. So with Bob Iger coming back, we are seeing a lot of Star Wars projects being pulled, a lot of stuff being shelved. I have to assume there was plans for Book of Boba Fett season 2. I'm not so sure what that future looks like now. I know they worked on a lot of props and stuff. They are going to take more of a hiatus. All that to be said, my hot take is more of just me pulling back and saying, like, yes, the writers didn't do a perfect job, but it's with those shows, but also at the same time, that's not really their circumstance. So the hot take's more of a prediction with this writer strike and the, Bob Iger coming back. I'm very, very confident that the future of Star Wars 4 years from now is going to look drastically different than we've come to expect the last 3 seasons or 3 years, Andor excluded. So yeah, I think Star Wars, because of the strike and what we're highlighting, I think it's going to be in a pretty good spot. So
That's if they can come to an agreement to end the strike.
Well, that's gonna happen. There's too much money at play. The strike's gonna end, or there's gonna bring in a bunch of crappy writers from from
No,
Fiverr.
I'm glad you. Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because yeah, you kind of get what you pay for, and I don't blame writers for like not wanting to write for no money. Like they're getting like dollars
Yeah.
for streaming numbers. And I also like I don't know a whole lot about it, so don't shoot me, but the way that writer rooms are also designed are just less time, like they're more just like, okay, how quickly can we do this, how many people can we throw in here, okay, what is that, all right, now let's go on to the next thing, and we'll
Yep.
just see if we want to keep any of this stuff. And then it's just like very touch and go.
Yeah.
No continuity, no respect for the talent that the writers bring.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can predict accurately it's going to get better.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we've seen that the love of characters like Boba Fett was not at all given like its respect or anything else. So I'd have to myself believe with Bob. Now, Bob Iger's Star Wars run wasn't so hot as we saw with The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy and how all that stuff was executed. To be fair, you could put more of that on Kathleen Kennedy and her, many flops to this point.
Well,
in blunders. So, I mean,
and I would say, like, I haven't been following any of this, so I'm not going to comment too much on writers' compensation. But when we're talking about Star Wars, especially Star Wars, but a lot of like other shows and movies, a lot of it is a team effort. It's not all on the writers, it's not all on the directors, but like we do know those heavier compensated people, the leaders, the executives, like those are the ones that should be taking most of the responsibility for the flack, the critiques. And like that's definitely where a lot of the critique should go, because they're putting that stamp of approval on that too. And I will say to the early, like, I don't care about the politics of who's running Disney at what time, but to Iger's credit, he relaunched the Star Wars brand with Force Awakens. That was a great movie. That was the movie that they needed to relaunch Star Wars. After Force Awakens, you had an explosion of content creators wanting to talk about Star Wars again. Not like hating on it. Sure, there were some of those people, but like that launched the Star Wars movement. And then you had Rogue One. So like it opened up with a killer opening, and we've had some great stuff like you mentioned too, like along the way. And we've all talked about it, we've ranked it. But yeah, like to your point, it's not it may not be fair to just drive it all towards the writers, especially when we don't know anyone's individual like situation of compensation. So, but all of that to say is people heavier compensated, the leaders, the executives up top, like those are the ones that should be taking most of the responsibility.
Those are the
any
ones
kind of
we can
critique.
yell at.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the biggest reality that I think I think Kathleen Kennedy even gets too much hate, because at the end of the day, she's just kind of helps dictate the strategy and direction of the whole thing. And then everyone else is underneath. The only big thing I've given her flack for is the decision to choose multiple directors for the sequel trilogy. I firmly believe,
again, that can't even be like a decision that like I'm sure 100% she owned.
Most of it. It was she herself. I mean, obviously everything has got to go through Bob, and he was CEO and chairman of the board at the time, so he was the ultimate power at Disney at the time of The Force Awakens. But
was he the chosen one? I'm just.
What was his midichlorian count?
I don't know, but he's back. He's Return of the Iger. So I don't know. Look,
I think Disney's still been hurting, like it hasn't bounced back since he's been announced.
Well, I mean, and so a lot of the stuff's going to take time to implement changes, but you have seen a lot of cuts. Disney's Magical Express, which picked people up from the Orlando airport, to take you to your resort at Disney World has, as of this last year, been cut off. And you now saw, as the last couple of weeks, the Star Wars experience ship, cruiser, whatever they called that 3-night crazy expensive stay. He's no longer, it's been discontinued. I mean, how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars were just poured into that project, all to be cut a short number of years later. So, and that all does come from that executive level. I don't know, Kathleen's how involved she is in the parks. I would imagine not too much, but if at all. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of sloppy decisions on Disney's end where you're just like, I don't know who thought this was a good idea. But bringing Bob back, scaling things back, cutting back, and tightening the belt a little bit, so to speak, and having more time to reflect, I think we're gonna be getting some good Star Wars. I mean, because they're gonna keep what's good, spit out a bunch that's not, and figure out a way to take. I mean, Mando, I think, is one of those things that they're like, well, where really is this gonna go? Let's really think through how we were planning on ending this thing, and same with Boba and all those other characters.
Yeah. And The Mandalorian was like, that was almost as good as you could hope for a live action Star Wars show. Like, that is now, he's the poster boy for Star Wars, Disney Plus. It launched to Disney Plus. So I think there are a lot of cool things to reflect back on too, not to just fanboy over Star Wars, but you know me, like I'll critique Star Wars on where it needs critiquing or whatnot, but we all have our own era of Star Wars that we like and things, whatever. But yeah, man, like I'm glad, you felt you had that conviction to apologize to the writers. The writers accept his apology. He's sincere.
It was sincere.
And he'll never do it again.
When Mando season 4 sucks, I'm going to be right back at it because you had a break. They scaled back. No excuses.
You had a vacation.
You had your vacation.
Unpaid vacation.
Yeah, exactly. You thought you didn't make money before. Well, now you're really broke. So no excuses, Mando season 4. I'm going to double down next time around. Right back at it.
And then there'll be another apology episode.
And then Robert Rodriguez is going to come out.
No excuse for him. I don't care. That one, Boba. You just don't.
Robert.
Up Boba. Sorry, you just did a terrible job. You did a terrible job.
What if you found out he actually directed a couple of these Bad Batch episodes? I have no idea. I haven't been looking at the credits.
Did what you did to Boba Fett, and I didn't even think that was possible. How are fans doing such a better job with fan films than you are an entire season? That's just insane to me. Like, maybe he had very limited power in that. I don't know.
Robert, if you're listening and you think you're gonna get an apology from Brody later on, you're not gonna get it. I don't think.
It's not gonna happen.
No. Yeah, you got us excited with the tragedy episode, and then the actual season of Book of Boba Fett was a tragedy. So it's just what it was. So anyway, well, I guess we just should go somewhere more positive and go into trivia time. So let's go somewhere lighter. Let's go.
This is the way to trivia time.
It's trivia time, and Amanda's got the cards.
Okay. What silicon-based life form can exist in no atmosphere? Is it tauntauns, wampas, duracrete slugs, or giant space slugs?
Giant space slugs.
The space slug sounds like the logical correct answer.
It is space slugs.
Oh, thank goodness.
Just thinking of Empire, right? When they're in its mouth. Yeah.
Do I want to give you another one? Because that one was kind of quick.
Yeah, that was.
Where was the rendezvous point Luke Skywalker told Lando Calrissian he would meet him? Dantooine, Tatooine, Dagobah, or Hoth?
Wait, what was that Luke told?
Where was the rendezvous point Luke Skywalker told Lando Calrissian he would meet him? Dantooine, Tatooine, Dagobah, or Hoth?
Well, it had to have been Return of the Jedi. Tatooine.
Yeah, I don't think too hard, but Tatooine.
It's Tatooine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you
Two
guys
for
did it.
two.
Two
What
for
a
two.
what a boost. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What actually Return are you wearing that shirt? Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, let me turn around so you can see the back.
Oh, a
Nice.
Star Wars Celebration
You
exclusive.
got the scout troopers
Yeah.
on the speeders.
You know, it's like 96 degrees outside, but I knew I had to wear long sleeves and leggings here because it's always 62
Freezing.
degrees in the studio.
in the studio.
Freezing studio. It's very, very cold in this space, but it's
like
moving.
Hoth.
Yeah, it's like Hoth, and it's moving in like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
4 weeks, something like that. So, and then we'll see. Maybe the next one's just gonna be blazing hot. Just gonna be.
Oh God.
I know they're like.
Miserable. And then I'd be like,
Remember
wish
those-
we could go back.
And remember those days we had to layer up?
Remember
Just-
that? Hey, we've been doing announcements for like new stuff leading up to. Is there a new announcement for this week?
Every week we've had an announcement. Though, as you just said, the last week was that was a big one. That was a big one.
That's
Only big thing I would say is we are going to be having a break for a 1 week, just nothing crazy.
no strike or anything.
No strike. No, Christian's,
No writer's strike.
Yeah, he's not the writer of the show. We don't have any writers. We don't know what we're going to say. When we come
Amanda
to this
writes
thing.
wonderful summaries though.
But
I'm
week-
thinking about striking.
Oh, snap. The week of July 4th, Independence Day. It's a holiday. Just Amanda and I at that point. So we're going to be taking a holiday that week, and we're going to be moving the studio around. So we're not going to be here, but following that week, it's when we are going to be going live on, still on Thursdays, but instead of at 6, it'll be at 8. That's it.
That's
Boom.
That's the only update.
8 p.m. People set your clocks.
You know, we just noticed more and more folks jump on at 6:30. So we're just going to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
These Pacific folks the Pacific time folks are just like, this is way too early. So we'll connect with you on your commute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our East Coast people are just like,
I'm in
they're
bed.
they're up late anyway, I guess.
They're
so.
in bed, and people on the West Coast are just eating dinner.
Yeah. So there you go. We'll move it up to 8 for y'all. So that's the only update I have. Anything else about these 2 episodes you want to talk about?
No, we'll see what next week brings when we review episodes 13 and 14, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just 2 more weeks of Christian.
And then you'll be rid of my stench hot takes.
Why do you think we're moving the studio? Like,
Yeah.
that's-
Do they have different time zones in Star Wars on like Coruscant? Like
That's a good question.
I haven't looked into this before.
It would make sense, but I don't know.
That's a good question.
And they talk a lot about rotations, like Mayday
Yes.
was there for
36
30
rotations.
There you go, 36 rotations.
I don't know.
Could care less.
What do you do? Anyway, wait, this has been a whole lot of fun. Before we start talking about time zones and Star Wars or anything else, we can talk about like taxes and everything else. We're going to let you go. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Duel of the Ranks.